single day. I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
So, hey guys, what's up? It's Madam X. This is Frequencyville Radio. And happy Thursday to everybody, September the 6th. So Saturn goes direct today, which is freaking great. Saturn is just one of those planets where you barely want to take it direct, so you definitely don't want to take it in retrograde. And I actually have to take that back. Saturn, I have a strong connection to Saturn because I'm a Cancer sun and Cancer ascendant. So, of course, Saturn is on my descendant. I have a close connection, and I really can identify with the Capricorn energy of Saturn and just all the things that Saturn represents. Just being on task, having certain criteria and restrictions and boundaries, and all of those things is ingrained into my personality with having that Saturn opposite my sun, that Saturn on the being the opposite house of Cancer and Capricorn being the opposite sign of Cancer. But one thing I can say, and I don't know if anybody can attest to this, I gotta use the bank machine. If anybody can attest to this, if you know any Capricorns or you're familiar with Saturn energy, and it's funny because I feel like that's why Capricorns may be the devil card in the tarot deck. For anybody that's into tarot or watches my channel and you guys are familiar with tarot, I had to pause this because I really had to burp, and it was so loud and unattractive. Anyway, if you're familiar with that devil card in tarot, it's like being bounded. And for a while I was like, well, why would they call, the Capricorn the devil card and everything like that? But having Saturn there and Saturn and that Saturn energy as Capricorn's ruler, it's like being so bound by restrictions and doing things a certain way and work and routine and just things that represent law. And when I say law, I'm not necessarily talking about law, even though Capricorn does rule governments and things like that. But, they make laws, they make structure. So I think structure is probably a better word. Just things that really, really represent structure. So what you'll find a lot of times with that Saturn energy and with Capricorns is they can run wild, which is also that other side of that devil card. It's like that devil energy represents restrictions, being bound to something, but also there being some sort of wildness about it, something against the grain or against what you would see as this good angelic white light. You know what I mean? So that's when you get to talking about negative habits or things like that. And I really don't even want to use the connotation negative. I'd probably better describe it as like a shadow side of energy. Because when you're so bound and you're so restrictive and you're so caught up and entangled and controlled by these rules, like there's just certain patterns and dynamics that Capricorns and Cancers don't go outside of. We have a lot of rules and restrictions set for ourselves, whether it comes to personal rules and restrictions, the rules and restrictions that life has placed on you, maybe the parental unit you come up in. And what's really funny is when I think about myself and my cousin who's Capricorn, when I was younger coming up, my dad, he's an Aries, he was very restrictive of me. I was his youngest girl, like his baby girl, his favorite girl. And I couldn't do the things that other kids would do. You know what I mean? And a lot of times they say Saturn represents the father in the chart. So I couldn't do things that a lot of other kids, and the Saturn is in my fourth house of home and family. So I couldn't do a lot of things that the other kids could do. Like there was a store right up the street from my house. All the kids used to walk to the store. I never could walk to the store with the kids. Even though my older sister lived in my home and she was 10 years older than me, I still couldn't go even though my older sister would be with the group or whatever the case. And like my school was right up the street. And you're talking like less than 5 or 10 minutes walking distance. I could never, all the kids in the neighborhood used to walk to school. I could never walk to school with the kids. You know, it was cool for me to play in my building or play right outside of the house, but when it just came to doing things that most other kids were able to do, I couldn't do those things. So Saturn has always had that level of restriction in my life. And then when I look at my cousin, she's a Capricorn, and her mom raised her. Her dad wasn't in her life, so her mom, that's like her mom and her dad. Again, Saturn representing the father, even though that wasn't her male father. Her mom played her mom and her dad role in her life, and she was very restricted and sheltered as a child too by her mom. And her mom was a Sagittarius. That's funny. Her mom was a fire sign. And, you know, the fire signs are usually kind of wild and free, but sometimes when it comes to the kids, you know, I guess every parent can be different. But her mom was very restrictive, and there were a lot of things she couldn't do and places she couldn't go. So just to show you some of the restrictions that Saturn places on your life, depending on where it is in your chart. Somebody just blew at me, y'all. I'm so busy talking to y'all that I almost got in the lane and another car is right there. Sorry, car. Sorry. You know, they're going to try to pull up and cuss me out. So it just goes to show you the level. I'm just going to put my hand up like, I'm sorry. Oh, he didn't look at me to cuss me out. Thank God. Anyway, it just goes to show you the level of Saturn's restrictions. So with Saturn going direct today, and it all depends where it's at in your chart, guys. Unfortunately for me right now, Saturn is in an area of my chart that rules work, career, finances, and it's retrograding and going direct back and forth between the house that controls relationships and everything like that. Of course, like I said, if it's on the descendant, it's in the 7th house, but it's been retrograding back into the 6th. So it'll be different for everybody depending on where this is happening at in your chart. But what you'll notice, regardless of where it's happening at, you may have things probably have gotten so tight and constrained and confined and restricted for you in whatever area it's happening in. So like maybe if it's in your 1st house, you've seen some physical limitations, or maybe you've had issues with the way people perceive you or understand you or getting along, or maybe some of your motivations or aspirations or some of the things you wanted to do have been restricted. If you have Saturn in your 2nd house, it could be your finances, things you value, people you value, things like that. Could have been some heavy restrictions around things like that. And if it's been in the 3rd house, maybe there's been some limitations, some restrictions, or some troubles or boundaries that you've had that have been really, really that had an extra sense of strain on them when it comes to your brothers, your sisters, your communication, maybe traveling here and about and things like that. If it's been in the 4th, maybe your home. And even though it's transiting, also pay attention to how it hits your natal planets and where it's at natally. So if you've had Saturn retrograding in that 4th, you could have had some restrictions to your home, your kids, your mom. A lot of times the 4th represents it represents the family, but the energy can be more strongly of the mother and things of that nature. So you could have had some heavy restrictions. You could have felt some more constraints or just strained and stressed when it comes to those areas. 5th house, maybe you're usually producing and you're creative, or maybe some of your intimate relationships and your children as well in that 5th house, because 4th can just be like the family overall, but 5th can directly be your children and what you give birth to. Maybe you find some constraints in that area. 6th house, your work, your health, it's probably been weighing heavily on your mind. And I still find that because it's work, it can tie into your finances as well. So if you've been in the 6th house, you may have been having some financial constraints, some financial stresses, and things of that nature if Saturn's been retrograding there. The 7th house, of course, your marriage relationships, your relationships with other people, you could have been having some constraints and some really, really slow-moving things in that area. Maybe something's happening in that marriage relationship and just your relationships with other people in general. So that's anybody. Those are the people that are in your daily life, even just going to the coffee shop, the person that's taking your order, the people that you are involved with at work and that you work with. So all of those kind of things come into play with the 7th house. With the 8th, maybe you've had some constraints and you felt really, really stressed when it comes to, again, I'm going to say because that house of Scorpio rules life and death and things like that, I want to say even health can fall into that 8th house, but probably more focal is the health of others, maybe loved ones in your life or your spouse or your in-laws and things of that nature, or what you receive from others. Maybe you've been expecting some money to come in and it's been really held up, or you can't make something happen as far as some money that's owed to you. Oh, also in that 7th house, I want to mention legalities. Maybe you guys have had some legalities that's going on that you haven't found out answers about, or you hadn't been able to resolve if Saturn's retrograding in your 7th. But in the 8th, maybe things that you're expecting to come to you from a spouse, issues with your in-laws, different things like that. Maybe even looking at where your life has gone, where your life is taking you, and just things that may have had you in a more depressive state with that 8th house. With the 9th house, maybe you've had some constraints around learning or new information or traveling or expanding your mind, thinking outside of the box. Maybe your thoughts have been very, very constrained. Maybe your movement has been restricted in some way, possibly with that Saturn retrograding in the 9th house. In the 10th, maybe it's with how people see you and your reputation and what you really want to do in life, and also falling back into the work that you do, which could be your career as well. Career's on the 6th house, but 10th house is your work life. It's your passions and what you do as well, which your career is caught up into that. And it's also how people see you. So you may have been having some stresses and some strains about your reputation, and, things going on, maybe information or things about you that you haven't been able to clear up with Saturn retrograding in that 10th house, and maybe just making progress in your true passions and where you really want to go in your career. So 6 is like the work that you do, but 10 is more like what you're meant to do in this life as your work or your career or your job life. So 6 would be the job that you have, and the 10th house would be the job that you want. So maybe you've really had some restrictions and some restraints with that, and you may notice now that Saturn is going direct that you may get better news and better information, and people see you in a better light, and you really get some things clear around what you're trying to do in that 10th house. In the 11th house, you may have had some issues with boundaries when it comes to your friendships, when it comes to your social circles. Maybe there's been some things that haven't moved ahead. Maybe you're trying to get accepted to certain organizations, social circles, friendships, things like that. Maybe there's been some constraints and some boundaries and some stress when it comes to that 11th house, and really broadening, say, whatever. One second, guys, I gotta move my. So maybe broadening your social circles. I was pulling up back at my house and I had to get my trash can out of the driveway because today was trash day and they left it right in the middle of my driveway. So anyway, maybe broadening your social circles and your friendships and the organizations that you're a part of, and even your mind frame to maybe take a new direction. Sorry for all this crunching and noise, guys. I got bags in my hand. When it comes to those sort of things, these are just brief descriptions because the houses represent so much more than I can get into in this video when I'm trying to make it pretty short. And then with the 12th house, if you've had Saturn retrograding there, again, your health or the health of others, maybe your deep inner emotions and feelings and mind frames, again, depressive state. Maybe something is weighing on you heavily emotionally. Maybe there's been a halt or some kind of rift in your spiritual beliefs and what you believe in spiritually, or what you thought that you believed in spiritually. What else in the 12th house? And maybe just having to go back and really dig deep to see what you believe, your self-thoughts and your self-perceptions, and the way that you possibly deceive yourself or think of yourself in relation to the collective and what you really believe on a spiritual level. So with Saturn moving direct, I think you will see more clear answers in these different areas of your life. You will see things stabilize. You will see more stability in any problems that you have going on in these particular areas. I think that with Saturn going direct, you'll start to see solutions come into play and get solidified. And you'll also see, because Capricorn and Mars energy get along, it goes really well together. You'll see that things really start to move. The energy actually picks up. Not to mention that, like a week or two ago, Mars just came out of retrograde as well. So I know you guys were really probably feeling stagnated when it came to the movement of things in your life. If it's happening in one of your personal houses, even your own movement and actions that you were able to take, and just getting some discipline and restriction around those things with Saturn in retrograde as well. So, with Saturn moving direct and Mars having gone direct, you guys are really going to feel like things pick up. For example, as I said, Saturn is in my 6th house retrograding, and it's going to come back into my 7th. But all week I've had a pretty mundane and easy schedule. Some weeks are busy than others. I take meetings all day at my day job. And today, by no coincidence, I'm sure, and not because I knew it or I planned it. I mean, I really, I do the astrology, but you don't always think of it first when it comes to other things that you do, say like in other areas of your life or your work. So I didn't even notice. Yesterday I was saying to myself, I knew Saturn was going direct, but I didn't recall exactly that it was the 6th. I keep up with astrology and what's going on, but sometimes I forget the dates that it's going to happen. So I knew it was going direct, but really soon, but I didn't really realize it was the 6th. So I was thinking about it early in the week. Well, yesterday I was sitting there looking, and I said, gosh, I hate when my calendar's really busy. And I was like, I really have a busy day on the 6th. Like, I have all of these meetings all day. I'm not going to have any breaks. I really had this busy day on the 6th. Well, this morning when I woke up, I was like, let me check where the planets are today. And it just so happens Saturn's out of retrograde today on September 6th. So that just goes to show you how Saturn's picking up. So my work picked up from slow, and it's funny that it's going to seriously overbooked on the day that it comes out of retrograde. And Saturn always represents working hard. Like, that's the one thing about Saturn going direct. It doesn't necessarily, it might get a little easier from it being in retrograde, but it doesn't get any slower. And I wouldn't even necessarily things get easier. They just start to move a little better, almost like when you're putting together a Rubik's Cube or when you're putting together a puzzle. The pieces of the puzzle move together a little bit more easier than you sitting there thinking, oh my God, I can't find where this piece goes. Saturn helps you put those pieces together, and Mars is that force that moves you. So I noticed, God, on the same day that Saturn goes direct, I have all of this stuff on my calendar. I'm going to have like a busy day from the time I wake up. Mind you, I'm recording this video at about 6 in the morning until I go to bed, and I know my work isn't going to end until about 7:30 in the evening. So guys, I hope that whatever you're working on in your life, whatever area of your life that Saturn is in, I hope that things get less complicated for you. The picture becomes more clear. The puzzle pieces become easier to move into place, and you guys can really lay some solid foundations or continue building that solid foundation in your life that Saturn has helped you start and create, and that you guys have the energy and the force to move forward with the things that you really want to see manifest in your life that'll stand the test of time. So not temporary things, but things that are going to be around for a while. Saturn represents Father Time. There's things that are going to be around for a while. It's not anything temporary. And anything temporary gets destroyed with Saturn. So guys, I wish you the best. Hope you liked this video. If you liked it, leave a comment below. Let me know what's going on with you in your life. You can always feel free to email me at tarothelpnow@gmail.com and give me a like. And, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of September. Again, happy birthday to all the Virgos out there. And happy birthday to all the Libras. Your month is coming up. Again, deuces. This is Madam X, Frequency Real Radio, and I'm gone.